Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your Wednesday and a great week out there so far. Here to bring you the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Wednesday. There'll be two main topics for today's forecast portion of the video. The first topic will be significant severe weather expected for portions of the north central U.S., especially the state of Minnesota. So we're going to talk about that. You guys are already dealing with some unsettled weather out there this morning. In fact, one storm just went severe warned in northeastern South Dakota, but we're going to get very detailed on that, try to figure out the timing, mention some towns and cities, get really zoomed in on the actual Storm Prediction Center outlook. And then the second thing I would say that is the next concern is the flooding rains that continue. Sarasota, Florida, for example, last night got a ton of rain in a pretty short amount of time. Similar story today, but it might be other areas, maybe some of the same similar areas. So we're going to speak on that, talk about what could happen in South Florida throughout the next 24 hours. And then we'll speak on everybody else too, not going to leave anybody else hanging here. And then after that, we'll discuss the severe weather outlook for the days to come, because I do think severe weather is going to continue to be a topic. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted an area they're watching for early next week, next Monday. So the pattern certainly continues to support rounds of severe weather. I'm not seeing any outbreaks or anything like that, but we certainly need to monitor things as they get a little bit closer to us. And then at the very end, we'll give you a very detailed look at the tropics. I saw some comments that were confused about what I showed you guys on the community post yesterday with Invest 90L. If you're wondering what the heck is Invest 90L, it's basically what the National Hurricane Center dubs an area of interest. That's all it is. It's quite literally an area of interest. The next thing would be maybe a tropical depression. Next thing would be a tropical storm, which would be a named storm, Alberto, which we still have not taken that first name of the hurricane names yet for 2024. And then the next thing you go to is a Category 1 hurricane. Then it goes all the way up to Category 5 if it gets there. So Invest 90L is just something the National Hurricane Center dubs an area of interest, okay? But we're going to get detailed about other things too. I'm watching other areas too, so we're going to get very detailed for you folks. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling. So you see all the rain dancing around here for the southern half of Florida. This will continue over the next 24 to 48 hours, and you guys are getting a lot of rain this morning. We even got pockets of heavy rain and storms in central Texas, a little bit of shower activity in the western deep south, a little bit of shower activity across Maine, and we already got thunderstorms rumbling through eastern South Dakota, even some storms in northern Nebraska. Some showers and storms up here for the northern half of Minnesota. I think we can get some tornadoes today in Minnesota, and we'll talk about why here in a second. But yeah, I mean, certainly could be a pretty active day. And this typically happens when you get into June. On average, the jet begins to shift a little bit further north. Severe weather chances on average begin to shift a little bit further north. The deeper you get into the late spring, summer months, that's pretty normal stuff. It really is. The jet, main mid-level jet, is way up here, the jet stream, so it's pushed up with a ridge that's building across areas of the country, which is also another story, the heat. But the western U.S. in general is pretty quiet because of a ridge built in place. But outside of that, it's pretty quiet out there. Watches, warnings, advisories, flood watches continue across South Florida. Eastern U.S. pretty quiet. Central U.S. pretty quiet, but in the orange you do have the heat advisories, the purple color here. That is excessive heat warning, so the heat continues to be a factor out here, so definitely take the safety heat precautions needed for the nasty heat out here, but out there. But in general, it's pretty quiet across the lower 48. The excessive rainfall outlook, there's pockets here and there you watch for, 5% risk here and here, but down here still just a slight risk. At least a 15% chance of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles in any given location. One thing I've been surprised with this entire event is how they have not bumped it up to a moderate risk. I thought for sure they were, but they have not for today at least. Okay, that might change in later outlooks, so just note some of this info could change. But watch out, Florida. Of course, you already know what's going on in Florida if you live in southern sections of the state. The Storm Prediction Center, here's a broad look at things first. General risk of thunderstorms here, up here in Maine, South Texas, and across the high plains. But this is the epicenter of the worst weather today. An enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. Okay, level 3 out of 5 in this orange area of severe weather. Slight risk in the yellow, level 2 out of 5. This includes Minneapolis, down here to Sioux Falls. So, International Falls, Duluth included in the enhanced risk, and then a marginal risk surrounding this. This slight risk could extend a little bit into the UP and Michigan. In fact, I think it will. So just note some of this info could change in later outlooks. It could tweak a little bit. It could move just ever so slightly. So just keep that in mind. But let's go on and zoom into this. So closer look at the state of Minnesota and surrounding states. So just don't have any town names up for the other states here. But Minneapolis, St. Paul, slight risk, level 2 out of 5. Brainerd, might be how you pronounce it. Enhanced risk, Walker, Grand Rapids, Ely, or either Eli. You let me know if you live up here, how y'all pronounce that. International Falls, Warroad, enhanced risk. Duluth, enhanced risk. Two Harbors, enhanced. You get down here to Rochester, slight risk. Alexandria, slight risk. And this slight risk is into western sections of Wisconsin. I think there's a possibility it gets extended to the UP and Michigan too, but you guys just have a marginal risk for now. So what is this driven off of? As of right at this moment, I'm making this video around 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Central. 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location, including in this brown area. A 2% risk a little bit further south in the green, and then west and east. You got a 2% risk of a tornado in the Minneapolis region. So higher populated area, obviously. So be aware that the tornado risk is a legit threat today, no doubt about it. So the wind threat, just a large in this yellow area, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. So you got the winds to worry about too, but the hail threat could be quite significant, quite literally. And the red area, that's a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. The yellow area, a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. But once again, you see the black outline region going all the way down here into northern Iowa, including the Minneapolis region, all the way up here, including all of the red area. That is a risk of significant severe weather. In this case, it being the hail outlook. So in this case, there is a 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. This does include, like I said, the Minneapolis area up to Duluth. Duluth has a higher chance to see hail. So some nasty storms expected. So let's just go on and look at the radar now. This is going to include the majority of Minnesota and include a few counties, several counties in northern Iowa, and then it does include sections of Wisconsin here. So, if I don't say your town, city, area of the state, not a knock on anybody. I've said this many times in videos. It's very important to know where you are on the map. Very important, especially when it comes to weather. It could save your life, quite literally. So, starting off this morning, we already have some thunderstorms rumbling through areas up here. H-R model doing a very okay job, at the initiation of these storms. But you keep these going. This is around lunchtime. So, it says 1 p.m., but this is in Eastern time, and I can't switch it to Central. So this is around lunchtime. You already got a storm trying to move through the Minneapolis region, for example. But watch how this entire area gets lit up as we get a little bit deeper into the afternoon. First off, you see some storms already going through. Like Eau Claire, you guys are already getting some storms that could affect you guys, early, I would say mid-afternoon. But you stop it here. This is the concerning look. 7 p.m. this afternoon. All right, you see how these storms kind of have that kidney bean look, how they're, the more vibrant colors is kind of on the, I guess you would say, the bottom left corner of these storms right in here, and they're kind of hooking. To me, that screams supercells. Now, just because you have supercells, I don't mean you're going to have a tornado outbreak, but it could mean you're going to have very large hail threats. So you're probably lacking true deep thermodynamics up here, better surface moisture, higher CAPE levels, but it's enough to get the job done. I mean, we are pretty deep into June at this point, so it's not like we're dealing with an April type setup. You can get pretty warm, hot, moist conditions all the way up here in Minnesota this time of the year. But you see these scattered supercells. If you live out here in the the country areas of Minnesota and the wide open here, you are certainly going to have a risk of some very strong to severe storms. Large hail capability up here. And these could grow up scale. I mean, for example, it shows Duluth getting hit hard around 6 to 7 p.m. this evening. Be aware of this. Look at these storms moving through the northern sections of Wisconsin. Look at these storms scattered about across all the way down here in the southwestern sections of the state. And look how these kind of group up into a line. 8 p.m., sun is not set yet. but some storms north, mainly north of the Minneapolis area. But these are some strong to severe storms. Could be producing the risk of all hazards, kind of going through northern Wisconsin and eventually getting into the UP. And northern Wisconsin certainly could get a light show this evening as these storms are moving through the northern half of the state. There comes another storm. It's like for example, in Minneapolis today, St. Paul region, it's like you get a storm risk maybe really early in the day, and then you get another one like closer like to the late evening hours. So we'll see what actually happens. But all this energy eventually kind of oozes south. A little bit of cooler, drier air moves in. But, you look at the significant tornado parameter with this, and honestly, it kind of spikes right after lunchtime. I mean, Minneapolis, St. Paul region right in here, this significant tornado parameter spikes to, over 6, 7, 8, even like a 9 or a 10 in some cases. So remember, this doesn't tell us that there's a 10 out of 10 chance of a tornado. It just kind of tells us that, hey, the ingredients, the higher the number, the better the ingredients are for a tornado potential. Okay, but you already see the higher number spiking right in here in the northwestern Wisconsin. Better kinematics up here, even northeastern Minnesota. And look how it really gets going right in here. You just want to watch out. There's a 5% risk of a tornado up in here too, but the significant tornado parameter per the latest long-range HRRR model really likes the idea of eastern, even northeastern Minnesota into northern, northwestern Wisconsin. Man, it really spikes right along that boundary of that line of storms. This tells me that you want to watch for like northern Wisconsin later this evening, for example. You see, this tells me the ingredients is really building into the southern flank of this line of storms. If it occurs like this, if it happens like this. But you look at the updraft velocity swath, and sure enough, it kind of zones in into this region right here in northern Wisconsin, and northern Minnesota. You see these streaks here, these colors, more vibrant colors, reds, oranges, pinks. This is indicated per the updraft velocity swath that these areas run a higher risk of some stronger to severe storms with larger updrafts, rotating updrafts. So this tells us that where these storms could have some rotation with them. Will it be broad? Will it be tight? I think we're going to get a few tornado warnings up here at minimum. Do we get actual tornadoes confirmed on the ground? I think so. I think there's probably going to be storm chasers up here. But yeah, so be aware of this. Duluth, even up here to International Falls along the Canadian U.S. line, be aware. Look at this street that goes through the Minneapolis area. So certainly be aware of these storms, guys, up here. It could be an intense afternoon and evening. Now, the rest of my folks here in the Great Lakes region, especially the UP, the rest of like northeastern Wisconsin, we could get some showers and move in throughout the afternoon. And then we could get the main energy that kind of begins to surge through in the rest of kind of northeastern Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan. The question is, how strong will these storms still be by the time we get into like 10 p.m.? That's a big question. But, it still shows kind of a loud evening across areas of like the western UP of Michigan, for example, northern Wisconsin. And, you guys will have to let me know what you end up getting up here in the UP of Michigan. I know I got quite a few viewers up here, which is awesome. But, this eventually gets down to Green Bay just after midnight. All these storms still packing a punch. I think they do begin to lose a lot of steam, but they could still bring a lot of widespread rain across the Great Lakes region all the way through tomorrow morning. So be aware of those storms. So if we kind of get back down to the southeast and we'll go through all the regions, and then we'll talk about the north central U.S., take more of a broad look at it. But in general, that pretty much covered all the weather for the north central U.S. for today. But speaking of the southeast, I kind of ignore this L down here. This will bounce back and forth. I don't think this is the center of where Invest 90L is, but in general, just really focus on all the moisture dancing around across the southern half of the peninsula of Florida. Some of these storms could form as far north as like Gainesville, maybe Jacksonville. But we get into this afternoon. The general theme for the entire southeast is just Florida. Getting a lot of shower and storm activity. Could get some storm activity in the Big Bend of Florida also. Maybe all the way up to the Panhandle. It's very possible. Could get some storm action into southwestern Georgia later this evening. But just the heavy rains continue mainly for the southern half of Florida. And then we have to watch as all this energy, as you can tell. Now, the HRRR model, by no means, is a great model to look at as far as the tropics, but it does show the moisture. But you got to watch all this moisture kind of just dancing around off the coast of the southeast. Does it get a little spin to it? You can already tell kind of how some of this moisture is moving this way. Some of it's moving like back that way. This is when we win to watch if something's going to quickly spin up over the Gulf Stream off the coast of the southeast. I think there's a strong possibility that we could get something. Now, is that full-fledged tropical storm Alberto? I don't know. I would say there's a lower chance of that, but we'll watch. All right, we'll give you the update on the tropics here in a second, but certainly a lot of rain here, and just a closer look at my friends down here in South Florida. This will continue. Sarasota will get hit hard again. Tampa Bay, some storms will move in this afternoon if they're not already over your area now. Storms just north of Miami especially. Just really likes this area right in here in Florida. Continues just to get widespread tropical downpours. You really can't rule out either, an isolated tornado either. I mean, there was a funnel cloud. I follow somebody that lives in the Tampa Bay area. There was a funnel cloud, in the Tampa Bay area yesterday. I don't think it produced a tornado. But if you look really closely here, it has a little spin up right here. So there was a spin here yesterday evening too. But that spin sort of moved over Florida weekend. The HRRR model could be on to something with this low pressure here. Kind of another low forming down here. May just have to watch what actually happens, but the HRRR model likes the idea of a little low-level circulation spin here, moving in later tonight, just north of Tampa. We'll see if that actually happens. But anyways, the general theme is just a ton of rain. Rainfall between now and the next 24 hours, just to tomorrow morning. Another 6 to 9 inches of rain is possible for areas of southwestern Florida. Sarasota down to Fort Myers. A lot of rain. I mean, another 3 to 4 inches of rain is possible in the Tampa Bay area. Miami, 2 to 3 inches of rain. So a lot of rain continues down here. The Northeast today, once again, another day. I mean, they'll fire. I mean, they're already kind of firing off right now, but a little bit more widespread as we get to around lunchtime today. Look at the widespread shower and storm activity in western Maine. I wouldn't say widespread. It's isolated to widespread. Nothing too crazy about this. Similar atmospheric pattern up here is what we've dealt with over the last several days. Just pesky low pressure spinning around. Even could get some storms out in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. You're lacking true thermodynamics up here, but just enough to get these storms going. So they'll form, dance around up here. Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine states for this. And then they'll kind of just wither away. Could wake up to some isolated showers tomorrow morning across western New York State. Now, the south central U.S., the southern plains, you guys have quieted down a little bit over the last couple of days, but you're still going to have some moisture that just kind of fiddles around down here along boundaries, kind of left in place in central Texas. So you could get some scattered downpours. It'll be hot, so you'll probably be begging for some of these downpours, but not a big deal. San Angelo, San Antonio, up to Austin, maybe all the way up to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. A downpour or two is very possible. So, don't completely rule out the chance of rain. The rest of the central and southern plains, everybody else you see on this map, just chill weather, just warm and not a whole lot going on. Now, we've already talked about the north central U.S., those severe storms popping up. Look at all those little discrete supercells popping off. I do think there's a chance they bump it up to a 10% risk of a tornado in this area. We'll watch. So just note, the outlook could change up here in the next hour or so. But all this storm action will likely grow upscale, meaning it kind of evolves into a line of storms. And as you can tell, sweeps across northern Wisconsin, areas of the UP and Michigan. And this will weaken most likely as it crosses over Lake Michigan into lower Michigan. And just greet you guys to some showers across the lower Michigan area as you're waking up tomorrow morning. Could wake up to some shower activity in the southern half of Minnesota also. So if you just jump right to the north central U.S. to get an update on the severe weather, there is actually a timestamp up for the severe weather. So it's just a little earlier in the video. So take advantage of that. The western U.S., quiet morning, ridge in place, pretty much dominating the pattern. A little bit of moisture return could pop up in southern Wyoming, northern Utah, maybe along the Front Range in Colorado, very possible. But the majority of the western U.S. won't see a drop, flake of anything above average temperatures as a ridge is affecting your pattern. And yeah, not a lot going on. Most of the country is pretty warm today, guys. The only area that's going to be not really warm is the Northeast. 60s, 70s for high temperatures, starting to warm back up across the Southeast. Pockets of mid-90s are certainly likely across Georgia, maybe even South Carolina, the Panhandle of Florida. The only thing that's saving the southern half of Florida from being so hot is all the cloud cover and rain. But 80s and 90s across the Southeast. Ohio Valley to the Midwest, 80s and 90s. You know, it'll remain cool just due to some lingering clouds, most likely down here in Texas. But guys, in the plains, I mean, there's probably going to be some areas in like maybe eastern Colorado, the Panhandle of Oklahoma, western Kansas, Nebraska that hits 100 degrees a day. Quite warm, a little bit cooler up here in the northern plains, but still very warm unless you, yeah, I would say, 90s in eastern Wyoming is certainly not cool by any means. Southwest, very hot, getting into the 90s and 100s across the Valley of California, the desert Southwest, well into the 100s. A little bit of cooler air up here in the Pacific Northwest, but not as cool as yesterday. So, moving past today into tomorrow, there's a slight risk of severe weather stretching from just west of Detroit all the way through Chicago, all the way through northern Indiana, central right to the heart of Illinois, not all the way down to quite to St. Louis, but includes Kansas City, all the way into just north and just south, just into areas of southeastern Nebraska, northeastern Kansas. Level 2 out of 5. We'll see if this uptrends. There's a possibility it could. There's definitely some questions in the model guidance with this, as you'll basically have a kind of zonal boundary right in here separating very dry and moist air. So right now, just a 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location in the green. And the wind threat, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in the yellow. And then the hail threat, pretty much right over the wind threat, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. Now remember, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. Remember I talked to you guys, if you've been tuning in about 2 or 3 days ago, I thought that we would have a shot at severe weather Friday for the Northeast. I think I mentioned it a lot kind of Sunday, maybe Monday-ish. Sure enough, there's a slight risk now for, just west of the I-95 corridor, or along it. Level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. So if you're, a big storm fan across the Northeast, Friday might be your day. If you're a person who deals with the storm anxiety, it's definitely not going to be your day. We'll have to watch. I mean, they're already confident enough. Slight risk, level 2 out of 5 from Boston. Almost includes New York City. I mean, all the way down to northern New Jersey, Scranton, eastern PA, southern New York. I mean, yeah. So we'll have to talk a little bit heavier on that as we get a little bit closer. Marginal risk, though, stretching from northern West Virginia, southeastern Ohio, all the way up to just about Caribou, Maine, down east areas of Maine. Big area of general risk of thunderstorms. Slight risk is now up for the heart of the plains, Nebraska, areas of Kansas, even including northeastern Colorado. And this is from, I'm about to show you all this. This is from that pesky cutoff low that I mentioned also a couple times that was hanging out off the coast of California. That is actually going to kind of move in, be embedded in the ridge, and this is actually going to be the main forcing mechanism for these storms across the plains. So I'm going to show you all that here in a second. It's always cool to look at. And all we know right now is, guys, is there's a 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in a given location in this area and in this area. So we'll continue to fine-tune that. For Saturday, predictability too low, but there will probably be a threat of strong to severe storms. Same thing for Sunday, predictability too low. But check this out. For Monday, day 6, all the way out to Monday, June 17th, kind of in the same areas it's going to deal with it today, a 15% risk of severe weather already up for day 6, a slight risk. And I'll talk about what that's driven off of here in a second. But we're really just going to focus on the 500 millibar flow and dew points. So that's your kinematics versus your thermodynamics. And where are they best overlap? We got to figure that one out. So I'll stop it here. This is for tomorrow afternoon. We're not going to talk about the ingredients for today. Today's happening today. Let's just move and focus in on tomorrow. So if you're wondering what you're looking at, this is the 500 millibar flow. This is winds per knots in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Technically, the mid levels of the atmosphere, about 18,000 feet up, pretty high up. So 2 things going on. First thing you'll notice that's not going to be a factor on tomorrow really is this area of energy right here. Okay, this is what we call a cutoff low. There's some circles going around it like this, and you got circle, circle. It's just a cutoff area of low pressure that's cut off away from the main flow of things, which is right into here. You got kind of a southwesterly flow that kind of rides above the ridge, and then more of a westerly flow right into here, and then sort of a northwesterly flow that kind of comes down here. Okay, and you're wondering, well, why is this all so far north? And maybe you're not wondering that, but you know, I act like you are. But this is a ridge kind of built into this region, so all the main flow is kind of pushed to the north. This area of energy is trapped in the ridge. It can't really do nothing. It's just kind of meandering around, very slow. Happens very often. It's not uncommon at all. Okay, so tomorrow's severe weather threat, which we'll take a look at the severe weather outlook here. This is tomorrow's severe weather threat, right? Slight risk right through here. So what's driving tomorrow's severe weather threat here? Let's go on and move it to about Thursday late afternoon, evening. So I'll show you the dew points here in a second. So what's going on here is kinematic-wise, you have this main northwesterly flow running through this region. Now, this is, you know, because of a trough kind of digging down into this region right in here. You're probably going to have some sort of surface low feature, and some sort of boundary is probably going to set up right, I would say, I don't know, right into here. Maybe a little bit further north, maybe a little bit further south. This is going to separate this moist air pulling into this region with the drier air associated with the trough up here kind of coming down from this direction. So, you know, pretty much if you're located in that drier air, you're not going to get a whole lot of severe weather. But trying to figure out where that boundary is going to be tough on a 500 millibar flow chart. Okay, but just know that typically on the southern flank of a mid-level jet like this, right down here, this is the southern areas of it, this is mainly entrenched into it, this is where most of your energy flows, and this is where you're probably going to have your best surface moisture associated with overlapping kinematics. Your kinematics being that favorable wind flow aloft, which is going right over this region right into here. Okay, tons of flow up here, but you're probably dealing with dry air. You're north of the boundary. Okay, I know that can get kind of confusing, guys, but yeah. So you go back to the thermodynamics for the same time frame, right? This is for tomorrow. Remember where I drew that line where there's going to be some sort of boundary right into here? Well, let's go back to actually tomorrow afternoon, not tomorrow evening. There's that line. You see how you got a big push of better surface moisture right into here? You know, you got dew points, you know, in the 60s and 70s right here, better moisture at the surface. You know, when you walk outside, it's very humid, and you're like, dang, you know, there's going to be some storms today. I can feel it in the air. That's quite literally a thing, guys. I mean, it really is. But then you kind of get up into here, right? You got dew points in the 50s, 40s. There's a boundary right into here. And it makes sense. It's kind of zonal, meaning it's kind of west to east, east to west, whatever you want to say. And it makes sense because if you kind of go back and you look at that mid-level flow, that's mainly zonal. I mean, yeah, it's kind of coming out the north a little bit, but it's kind of a zonal look. And you kind of compare that to that, and it makes sense. So there's some sort of boundary cold front kind of seeping through. Basically, along that boundary and just south of it, that's where your best moisture at the surface is going to be for Thursday. So we got to figure out where that moist air is going to rise. And, you know, for example, the latest Euro says, hey, you know, it's going to rise right into this region. And the closer you are to that boundary, just south, it's probably where we're going to have the best opportunity for some strong to severe storms. And if you kind of go back and you look at the outlook for, like, look at the surface moisture, right? Which is probably the best thing to look at over kinematics in this certain situation. You go back, you look at the Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow. It makes sense. It lines up actually well with the surface moisture right into here. And you're thinking, well, there's a ton of surface moisture down here. Why isn't there a threat of severe weather? Well, it's because you look back at the kinematics. There's no flow down here. Nothing, like 10, 15 knots. Not even enough to put a color on the map. It's all up here. So I hope that makes it make a little bit more sense. Okay, now we'll keep it on this map and we'll start to move it into our Friday. Remember, now there's a severe weather threat for areas of the Northeast. One thing I want you to notice is you see how there's like white into here, and there's this weird embedded area of flow. Flow meaning winds 18,000 or so feet up in the atmosphere, mid-levels of the atmosphere. That's that cutoff flow. It's finally getting a move on, and it's bringing a little bit of energy, a little bit of wind flow with it, a little bit of lift in the atmosphere. Okay, now we'll go all the way to about Friday afternoon. This will actually kind of come to the backside of this ridge now. It's kind of being introduced somewhat to the actual jet. Ridge, main portion of the ridge is now kind of right into here, which makes sense because your flow is kind of riding up through here, kind of surging right down with the digging of a trough that's going like this. Okay, so there's actually embedded energy right into here, and there'll be just enough surface moisture to kind of ride up to this. So this will get probably clusters of some nasty storms going across areas of the plains Friday because of this flow meeting some surface moisture. And same thing down here. You see how this dramatically digs right into here and then kind of shoots kind of back up? That's just enough flow right here. Remember, at the bottom edge of that mid-level jet. You get too far up here, you don't have enough moisture. Trough digs down, brings in a cold front with it, stabilizes the atmosphere. But right into this region, right into here, that's where your best surface moisture is going to ride up into this area. And it makes sense because you kind of go back this and then you look at the surface moisture for this area. And we'll take it all the way to Friday afternoon. And great example of it, right? Remember, I just told you a lot of dry air up here, dew points in the 40s and 50s. That's not going to get the job done. If you're wondering dew points, what you keep talking about, I don't understand. Well, dew points, sub 60 degrees for like the eastern U.S. probably isn't going to get the job done for severe weather. You need to get very moist air, dew points in the 60s and 70s. And I say this every once in a while. I think a lot of people misunderstand how to correctly gauge how humid it is outside. A lot of people always want to use the humidity percentage. Don't use that. Look at dew points. That shows up on your weather apps too. If you see dew points are like in the 60s, it's pretty humid outside. If you see them in the 70s, it feels tropical outside, downright miserably humid. Okay, so just a little tidbit there. But there's the better moisture right over the I-95 corridor on the southern flank of that mid-level flow. There's that moisture building into this region with that flow from that cutoff low surging right into here. And that's why you're going to get some clusters of strong to severe storms across the plains. Storms most likely in the I-90, close to the I-95 corridor in the northeast, stretching all the way back to maybe northern West Virginia. So want to mention that. And, one thing that we won't get too detailed on, but I'll kind of do this on the fly here, and let's look at this. There is that threat Monday that we mentioned, and the threat Monday is driven off this, and this is 500 millibar ridges troughing. There's that cutoff low for Friday, right? There's the trough for Friday also. Okay, but when we get into Saturday, does this little embedded area of energy right here in the white little splotch of blue kind of do something Saturday? Very possible. Then we get into Sunday, could be something maybe in here Sunday, but it's Monday that has that 15% risk, right? This is because of this huge upper trough digging down. This could really get some energy going right into here, but we still need to figure this one out. We do. Let's make sure we got the right day here. Yeah, Monday. So we're good there. So big trough digging down, ridge, really built all the way up into Canada. Something's going to happen probably right in the middle. Okay, so let's move to the update on the tropics. Now, just note, they always do an update around 8 a.m. So they'll literally drop an update probably 5 minutes after I upload this video. They could bump this up to a 30%, 40%. They could introduce an area down here, and I wouldn't be surprised one bit. Just note that Mitch sees it, I'm seeing it, and I'll certainly post an update in the community tab. But as of now, around 1 a.m. Eastern time, there's still a 20% chance of cyclone formation within the next, I would say, few days. I know it says 7 days, next few days. So this is driven off basically a stalled frontal boundary right here in this region, area of energy trying to get going. That's pretty much right off the coast of Florida right now. And this will try to get going off the coast of the southeast, maybe over the Gulf Stream or something. It's just a huge broad area of low pressure. And I think there's a chance they'll increase this to a 30 or 40%. If they bump it up to a 40, you'll see it in orange here. But I think they will increase it I think they will. We'll see. We'll see. I might be wrong. I think they will. But right now, latest from the storm, I don't need to say Storm Prediction Center. We're not in that anymore. The National Hurricane Center, 20% chance of development with this. So we'll certainly watch. Okay, I'm going to watch for something to show up here in the next couple of days. But let's take a closer look at what we call Invest 90L. So it's very disorganized, right? You can actually see where the frontal boundary is, kind of draped across this region. But let's try to pull this up, draw on this for a minute. If you look right here, I mean, guys, it's going to be very hard. Right into here, there looks like there's a little low-level spin going on. But there's a lot of flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere coming in from this direction. So this is kind of pushing most of the convection, which you see in kind of the splotches of like reds and oranges and yellows. This is indicated by higher cloud tops, which means there's a lot of convection ongoing. So this is all pushed off to the east of whatever center of circulation, which you really hard to even say that there is. It's all getting pushed off to the eastern, southeastern side of the storm because the flow is really pushing out the west, northwest in this area, the upper level wind pattern. So it's just kind of shearing the system basically, or whatever you want to call it at Invest 90L. So we'll watch as this eventually sort of kind of drifts into this region, and does it try to get its act together right into here. Okay, very disorganized system, very expected. So that's what's going on with this. And you compare model guidance, right? This is the latest GFS. There's two things that's going to be going on. So we're going to kind of zoom through this at a pretty fast pace here. This is starting Thursday morning, blob of green, some splotches of yellows and reds right here. Watch how an L pops up right here into late tomorrow night, all the way into Friday morning. Something tries to get going right here. Regardless if it does, it's heading on out into the North Atlantic. Okay, only thing it'll probably do is kind of pull up those rip currents along the Carolina coastline, southeast coastline, and maybe big waves. Okay, this heads on out, does pop off that low pressure. Then your eyes kind of go down here to the Central American area, Yucatan Peninsula, Bay of Campeche, which is right into here. A lot of tropical moisture you're seeing here. Big CAG events ongoing, big broad area of lower pressure. You know what CAG is? It stands for Central American Gyrum, which is basically a huge broad area of low pressure of showers and storms across Central America. Now watch what happens. We get into Sunday. Has a quick forming tropical system on the Pacific side of Central America, and then it gets something right into here, deep in the southern portion of the bay area right here of Campeche, and tries to pop off a sub 1,000 millibar low early next week, deep down here in this portion of the Gulf of Mexico, surging a lot of tropical moisture into the western Gulf of Mexico, and eventually it takes whatever this is and makes landfall into Mexico as a 996 millibar low, kind of around this time next week. That would be enough to dub it a named storm. Now you got Alberto and then Beryl, I think is the way you pronounce it, the B name. Listen, whatever this is could end up being Alberto. Then this could end up being Alberto, or one or the other. Beryl, Alberto, and then you got something trying to show up here. We're not going to talk about that. Some of the models are showing something way down here deep in the Caribbean. So that's the GFS. What about the European? The European tries to pop off this low pressure here too. Tries to form it quickly over the Gulf Stream. But eventually, regardless, and I'll say the Euro really likes the idea of this developing. Tanks it almost all the way down. In fact, it does, all the way to a sub 1,000 millibar low pressure. Could quickly maybe take a name off the hurricane list. But regardless, it's heading on off. We will watch our friends up here in Atlanta, Canada for that. But we get into Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning, this coming Sunday morning. Look at the tropical moisture across the western Gulf. We get into next Monday. There it is. Same thing as the GFS. Low pressure off the Euro. Remember, Euro is a lot more conservative, so it's showing this too. Tropical moisture across western Mexico. It gets this to a sub 1,000 millibar low next Tuesday, and then kind of makes it go take a landfall right into Mexico. Same time frame as the GFS, around next Wednesday. 996 millibar low. Pulls it, and then we just got to watch any kind of tropical activity coming out, tropical moisture kind of coming out the Caribbean. I certainly want to watch that too. And, the Canadian icon, which is less looked at models with the tropics, like I said, takes that right here, tries to pop off an L here, form that. And then even the Canadian shows it, guys. Gets that tropical system in the Bay of Campeche Wednesday morning, makes landfall in the same area, maybe a little bit later, as a sub 1,000 millibar low pressure. And even the icon, guys, forms that low right here, tries to, and then it gets some tropical energy going in the bay here. There it is right here, a little bit further south, but eventually it just takes it into the same area. Next Wednesday morning, incredible model agreement with something forming in the Bay of Campeche. Incredible model agreement. And, here's a better look at it, a little zoomed in look at it. This is for next Tuesday afternoon, 998 millibar low on the Euro. GFS, 998 millibar low on the GFS next Tuesday. This is all the same time frame. Canadian, 1,000 millibar low in the Bay of Campeche. And guys, even the icon, okay? And we'll have to kind of go back to this. But same deal, guys. This is around next Tuesday, 999 millibar low. So it's showing something there, guys. And, the chances for a tropical depression developing, it's maxing out down here in the Bay of Campeche per the European ensemble, which is one of the most reliable things you can look at in the longer range. And even the chances of a tropical storm developing, guys, it's increasing. Now you're up to like a 60 to 70% chance in this area. And yes, even up here, and we'll have to, let's see, the Northwest Atlantic. They're showing there's a pretty high chance of a tropical storm developing from this energy off the coast of the southeast too, guys. So, yeah. Now, kind of go back to this, and I should have showed you this earlier, but rainfall between now and Sunday evening, folks. I think most of the rest of the rain's gonna fall in the next 48 hours in South Florida, but you could continue to get rain throughout the rest of the weekend too, just not as much. That's all I got, guys. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I'm probably gonna have an evening video, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, but probably in the next couple of days. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day.